and welcome to the end, the finale of Lies of P. The DLC is complete. We have defeated the final boss, which I still don't know his name, Alan something, the Blood Artist, which was easily their pinnacle boss of their entire game. A great send-off. I don't believe they're making more DLC for this game. And they wanted to go out with a bang, which is what they did. I know many people have been looking for my thoughts on this, especially because this has been a playthrough that has been very up and down with Lies of P. It has not been a consistent, just like solid, just wonderful experience. It hasn't been that. So I've got a lot of things to talk about today. I think I want to start with this though, before we get into the boss and like some little minutia bits. I am super excited for the next game in this series. What I saw here, and what I would put in notes for any game that we're reviewing that's going to come out, and advisory things and things like that, is that they showed a remarkable willingness to learn from mistakes and to show that they're fully capable of taking that information well. Like, a lot of people do not take criticism of their baby very well and actually just improve upon it to find their own path. Because I don't think a lot of the games that are Souls-like that come out, and we've had a lot of them over the years now, are looking to just be a cheap knockoff of a Souls game. FromSoft's done that, and they've also varied their own theme. Of course, Bloodborne, Sekiro, Night Rain are all variations on that theme, and they do that extremely well. What the other companies, I hope, want to do, at least for the most part, is take that formula of that style of game. So, I mean, similar to what you would have with FPS, right? Take that FPS idea and mold it into their own shape that is different, but works on that core foundation, but is a different experience. And then people would be able to say, oh, you're looking for a more action-packed or a more story-driven style version of those games. Well, you would like to go to something like Lies of P. That's going to provide that experience for you. And what I saw here, particularly with the DLC, which brought this game up. So I would argue, I'll tell you now, if it wasn't for the DLC, I would probably rate this game like a low B. I would rate base Lies of P as like a low B. It knows what it wants to be, but it's not fully fleshed out, and it has problems. Now I finished the game. I did spend a couple of hours last night researching feedback of when the game originally came out, and it's chock full of complaints, like that very much align with mine. And I think that's interesting given the very passionate people who came and watched through my playthrough or loved this game endlessly. It's interesting to see that this feedback was that my feelings on the game were certainly not contained to me. They were pretty common, and the theme fits because those problems are there. It's like all of us see that dress that's with one color or another, is that they had a very, very solid start, a really solid start. The first like quarter of the game is really good, really, really good. Like you're into it very quickly. It's like, okay, the combat is recognizable, but it's got a twist. The world of the puppets and the modifications you can make as a puppet, and the concept of lying is a nice way to go about things. All the way, I would say, up until Hotel Krat, or maybe slightly after. And then it starts going off the rails a bit, because it feels like they had a beginning and they had an end, because the end is also fantastic in the base game. I really like the ending. I loved everything. I loved certainly the bosses. The level design did not particularly get better. And people were like, what do you mean by the level design? They really tried to create worlds that were feeling open, but ultimately weren't. But they didn't really have the scope or the, maybe even the ability to create those worlds. And what they ended up with was an extremely linear game, where there was two roads to go on, but they just went round a block and came back together. They put shortcuts in because that's the theme of this game, but the shortcuts were very predictable. And I'm not the only one, I'm sure, that approached a Stargazer and saw just right next to it there was a locked door that can only be opened from one side. In fact, they're identical throughout the entire game. We're like, okay, so that's a shortcut back to here. Let's go there. I think the most egregious example of this, I'm not even sure what the area is called, but for me it was like a Manchester shopping centre, where you get a Stargazer, a dead center, and it's just a cross pattern of 4 corridors that all just lead back to the same Stargazer. So, and you just go down into a tunnel, you circle back up some stairs and you come out the other one and you go back around again. And it's just a maze to get you from actually A to B. Now, the other games are like that, but they're obfuscated in a different way. That obfuscation is the talent. That's the creativity. And that lacked from like the first quarter of the game all the way till the end, and ended up sort of degenerating for me into just... Certainly by the time you get to like the underground quarries and the mines and the villages that are there, into just areas filled with just ambushes and enemies over and over again. And it wasn't fun. I wasn't enjoying it at all. I was like, this is kind of just tedious at this point. But that was my main problem. I was like, this has got a lot of problems here. And then it picked up again towards the end where, because the bosses then also degenerate into silliness. Some very bad hitboxes. Some just kind of cheap abilities that the bosses did that was like, but then it kills you. Now, this is where I also get a lot of feedback from people who love these games for the difficulty. Sure, that's fine. If you're just looking for a very hard game, there's loads of those out there that you can find, and people get a real sense of satisfaction from overcoming something that is very hard, despite why it's hard, right? Is it hard for the right reasons or the wrong reasons? Now that's going to be different for everybody, which is why it's a subjective thing, right? It's different for everybody. Like, I love the fact, some people are like, I love the fact that this thing is just absolutely all over the place and crazy, and I beat it and my friends couldn't, and you get a sense of satisfaction out of that. I get that too. But then the DLC, those complaints were heard, and then the DLC, they like really decided to go, oh, okay, let's really think about this. Let's take some care and attention. I'm trying to apply some logic to this world, because I would argue very distinctly there are lots of areas in the base game that are just illogical in terms of what is happening to create the scenarios they want, and not come across as just being mean. So I would highlight things like this town hall with the rafters with giant blocking enemies just stood on a rafter that doesn't even accommodate their feet. It's just illogical. It's silly. It's just being mean. Areas that are just filled with things that slow you down and rot you. Going back to that cross-sectioned area, it's like, oh, this is just a tunnel full of things that break your weapon, and there's just a reward at the end of it. So you've just got to deal with it and run through it. And it's just like... In fact, that was one of the first times I actually started skipping stuff. I was like, this is just annoying. It's not interesting. It's just breaking my weapon, or I have to just stop and grind my weapon to keep it going, and then deal with this big silly enemy along with some other smaller enemies around it. Like, it's all very doable, but I'm not interested. But the DLC was so much better, particularly the zoo. It did sort of ease off towards the end, but particularly the zoo and the circus with mini games and open areas still leads you from A to B, which all the games should do. You want to be able to progress. Hidden bosses, all that kind of stuff. They did go still particularly mean in certain areas where they were just like, ha 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 ha, which kind of might be a flavor of their games, is like, we're going to do some areas which are just really, really mean. They once again recreated the giant blocking double shield enemy on a tight bridge with lots of areas that knock you off that just make you run round and round and round. But there are ways around it. You can throw things at them. You can get around it in other ways if you want to. Those of you like me who are maybe looking to like play my character and not just throw things and consumables at enemies, which isn't as fun as actually engaging in combat, will feel a little frustrated like I did. But there are ways around it should you choose to do that. So the DLC really brought the game up to like a high B, low A for me, because it was really well done, and it did show that growth, which is why I would very much be excited for what their next project is. There is a tease that it's going to be Wizard of Oz. We do see Dorothy in the final cutscene, so the next game, and I'm looking forward to the idea of a series of games based in fairy tales, Hansel and Gretel, all those kinds of things that they can create wonderful worlds. I would hope that if they do go down that road, that they really embrace the theme. I think one of the disappointing things I had with Lies of P is they didn't super embrace the puppet thing. A lot of the game is more like zombies than anything else. Like, it very much moves to that rather quickly, I would argue. Whereas I was I understand you want enemy variety, obviously, and having some different styles of things. But I would really love to have seen much more focus on a world with frenzied puppets. I think they got too big too quick. Like, the Parade Master is enormous, and they're saying it's like, oh, it was designed to be like a meet and greet fun thing for kids. That thing is just horrifying. It's horrifying. Even if it didn't have the giant sharpened razor claws, just its sheer scale and size is intimidating as hell to children. That thing is absolutely horrifying. I think they should have built up to larger puppets that were more... They did do some construction puppets. That's what I wanted to see them really scale into. Like, this is what I would have appreciated, is that we're building to, like, ginormous puppets, but we get them kind of early in the game, whereas more different, especially if you take the idea and lean onto BioShock a little bit with the plasmids. And one of the things the Burial at Sea DLC did for BioShock Infinite was really think about, why would these plasmids exist in this world? Let's apply some logic to it, because we've got fire and freeze, and even the base BioShock did this. It's like, it's cool if you're smoking down in Rapture like they were in that era, and you can light your own cigarette with a thumb. And then they showed waiters using the teleport to move quickly, more efficiently between tables. If you're saying you've built all these puppets to be servants, essentially, and to fulfill, which is what they did, right, to fulfill the monotonous eras of life, there's so many things you can do with that. And they did a bit more of that in the DLC with the puppets that are like mining rock puppets and miner puppets, and they would be designed specifically for that, maybe not even humanoid. I would love to have seen more of the puppet stuff. We're very much in zombie land for a huge portion of the game. It did a lot right in this game. Let's talk about the highlights of this game. The weapon system and the overabundance of upgrade materials. Absolutely adored this. I adored this. I have never, in a Souls-like game, tried so many different weapons. And respect. I can't tell you. I don't think I've ever respect in a Souls game. Ever. Not a single time. Because I've just never needed to. I've stuck to my weapons. And I'm not somebody who does like 7 or 8 playthroughs. I'm going to do a magic playthrough now and a dex playthrough or anything like that. Respecking does exist there, but I've never bothered with it. Making this such an easy way of respecking, I would almost love templates. I mean, one major downfall is you choose a class at the very start of the game, which is more like strength-focused or dex-focused, or magic-focused. And the respecking doesn't change that. I would allow people to just reset to a base character so they don't have these weird points. If you're putting in such a huge menu of weapons that all work differently, and because people who play in the first time aren't going to know that you have these really cool weapons later on, and the weapon handle system and the swapping and scaling and all those kinds of things, and making your own move sets. Don't restrict people or somewhat punish them, even though it's a minor thing. It doesn't make a lick of difference in the long term. But just let people play around with their points. If you're going to put in such an easy respec system, let people really go to town on it. Do not make a choice that they made in the first 20 seconds of the game linger 40 hours later, right? That's one of those things I would mention. But making respecs really easy. The golden fruit tree was kind of a clever idea. It's inoffensive. I'm sure some people went back to it every 10 minutes to redo it, which is not what they were hoping for. They just wanted a currency that wasn't souls, that you could just go and mess around with to respec or change your P organ and things like that. But the weapon system, absolutely phenomenal. I'm not sold too much on the talent tree idea. I think they could have baked that into armor, or just maybe had better balance on some of the bosses without having that system. One of the things you have when you have such a modifiable talent system is that you end up with a lot of choices that kind of feel mandatory, right? Like raw damage, more bonus souls, having extra heals. Like, these feel kind of mandatory. Now, I understand they don't really want to just duplicate the Estus shard system to upgrade it. I would have just had that happen via levels or something if you wanted that to happen. It does allow some level of customization, and I will say for the final boss in the DLC, we did go and respec to min-max for that boss. Okay. Maybe have, I would have suggested just less choices. There's a huge amount of choice in there that a lot of them just, you'd have to be going for a very specific type of playstyle to make it work. And I think it can lead to some balance issues with bosses for that to happen, which is your main core of the game, is you want these epic boss battles, right? It's what these games are known for. So do I dislike it? No, not really. Like, I think it's fine. I think it's totally fine. It does encourage you to go and do side bosses to get more quartz and things like that, so you can upgrade it. So it's got a lot of pros to it. When I say I'm not sold on it, it doesn't mean that I'm not a fan of it. Do you understand? There's a nuance there. It doesn't mean I hate it. That's not the case. Like, I did go and min-max it, and I did mess around with it, and it does bring me to a very important topic that Lies of P really suffers from, that I wish it didn't. And all the games kind of do this. And it's, for me, it's just irritating. As somebody who thirsts for detail in building my character, I love detail. And I can get away with detail like the type of scaling letter. Sure, right? A scaling is good. D scaling is bad, right? Okay, I'm going to get more out of it if it's A or S scaling. Okay. The lack of information on the tooltips. And now this is a very consistent theme with me, because I have been moaning at certain Blizzard Entertainment at this for the last, I don't know, 15 years, is the lack of clarity on what things do that just leads you to kind of guess, but you don't know. And I don't particularly want to spend my time in a game like this whacking away on a training dummy to figure out if something is slightly better than another. So an example would be the amulets. And this also applies to the talent tree, is it will just say increases attack for consecutive attacks. Okay, so the premise there is that I get more damage if I chain attacks together. How much? Is it 1%, 10%, 20%, 3%, 0.5%? No idea. And then there's another one that like does increase damage against puppets or humans. How much? I don't know. Increases weight limit. All right. How much? Like, that, all of them are like this. Like, pretty much all of them are just there's one that's like has a chance to refund or to make it so your healing cell didn't get used. So, what? 20%? 1%? 3%? What is it? I don't know. I don't know. And when it came to the talent tree, it was also the same. It was like increases. There was some wording that was so confusing. At first, I thought they were being funny and kind of mocking the Souls games, but I think they got stuck. It was like, enhances guard, regain on guard. Like, things like that. And I'm like, what are we doing here? By how much? Increases the destruction value of this. Like, what does that mean? Is that the build towards stagger? There was another one that's like perfect parry will cause your enemies to be knocked off guard. Now, that didn't work on bosses, but did it? Did it contribute towards the stagger window? And even people who played thousands of hours who were in the stream are like, we're not sure. Think so? You know, maybe. What does that actually do? I don't know. And that's off-putting, because it creates a lot of items that feel kind of useless because you're not sure what exactly they're doing. And then you try them out, and did it feel different? When I respect for the final boss, I was like, okay, something feels different, but I'm not exactly sure why. It's probably maybe this, because we dropped some stuff. Maybe? I don't know. Is it because and there's so many choices, because you can then enhance abilities with the DLC quartz usage. It's like, maybe I didn't enhance this thing, which is leading to this thing. When it increases the stagger window, is it like by 10%? A second? 2 seconds? No idea. Absolutely no idea. What is the stagger window? Is that when they got the white bar around them? Or is it going to be when they're actually staggered on the floor? Does that mean I can get more attacks in when they're actually staggered? Or does it just mean I have a longer opportunity to get them into that? Is it like normal phase, then there's the stagger phase with the white bar, and then the stunned phase? Or is it disrupted phase? You know, things like that. And I'm sure there was a tooltip earlier to try and clarify that, but there's a lot of things going on. A little bit of clarity would be very nice. I would like to see that in their follow-up games as well, as to what it is, so I can make some choices that I feel confident about. And I'm not like, I don't know if this is better. Is it better to just have flat damage or whatever? You know, things like that I find very, very interesting. And I would prefer to know what I'm doing. I don't think there's any benefits to obfuscating that information. I think people would like to know. Other things they did really, really well were the abundance of weapon upgrades. There's so many. I had no issue when I wanted to swap weapon going straight to capping it out from pretty early on in the game, honestly. They were just like, oh yeah, you've reached this part of the game. We want you to have capped weapons at this point, rather than like there's 2 chunks in the whole base game and you'll have to replay the game on New Game Plus to get another weapon to cap. Like, why? If I want to try out weapons, I don't want to try them weaker. That sucks. That's not fun because I've got this weapon to a good level, but this weapon looks cool, but I might not like it. But I want to at least put it on par. Like, just throw resources at people to upgrade. Just let them have them. It's one of those silly systems. Weapon upgrades in these kind of games should work 2 ways. 1, if you can farm a slightly harder area than that drops these resources. So I'm thinking Demon Souls here down in the mine where I did this is like, oh, if I farm here for a couple of like resets, I can get a weapon upgrade +1 over where I maybe should be. But if I've reached a certain stage or level of the game, then it's going to be abundant because that's the weapon you should probably have at that point. And then I get a new weapon. I'm like, well, I want to try it out. But if you limit those resources, you're like, well, it's going to be like 2 levels below. Is it even better? I don't know. I have no idea. So I loved that. I thought that was phenomenal. I've talked about the mistakes. Let's talk about the final boss. People are asking, do I love this boss or not? I think it's very, very good. I think given the tools they had, they actually created I think they created the best possible, hardest encounter they could be. It is this game's Millennia. It is this game's pinnacle boss, for sure. The Blood Artist. They had to make it a little unfair, but they were still fair with it. So it's unfair in terms of its aggression level on occasion, because it does have this menu of abilities, which I've mentioned in several videos. And sometimes you just got considerably easier ones. But all were learnable, for sure. All were very learnable. He has no stamina restrictions whatsoever, which is what they kind of needed to do by this point in the game. You have a lot of healing, and you do have things that can just make you way more tanky by this point. I actually found the most powerful stat in the game to be capacity, weight limit, to keep light while wearing very good armor. That actually served me super well by accident, because I was like running into weight issues earlier. I was like, I'm not fat rolling. So I didn't know about that, but it ultimately ended up to be like one of the best stats in the whole game. Was doing that. And this boss has the ability to kill you in like 4 hits. And it's even worse in phase 2, where his damage is amplified even more, and it becomes very graphically obscure, which I understand is one of the ways of increasing difficulty, is to make him a little bit more difficult to read. And it's very nasty. I particularly found 2 attacks in this fight to be very mean. One was if you ever go behind it, he can put his buzzsaws behind you, because you've side strafed, which is the correct move, while it's doing a frontal. And you're going to attack it, it'll like, nope, not doing that either. That caught me out. I never really liked the buzzsaws down on top of you. Even if you parry them, I'm told that it actually ticks. So if you parry the first one and then do very rhythmic parries, you can parry all of it. What I wanted to have happen was to have it come down and then side dodge to his side so I could punish him during that. I never really got that to work. I tried a number of different ways, like dodging into him, dodging to the side. Ultimately, what I found was the best play was to parry and dodge backwards and then get out of it, but it left me less opportunities to punish. But that was fine. What they did do for the first time, though, was create a boss that I wanted to kill in a bad way. Like, it took me a couple of hours to kill this thing, and the kill itself is so beautiful. It is so, so beautiful, because as it got to low health, the stagger window popped up. And it went hyper defensive during this. I mean, you can watch the clip as I tried pretty right timings for dropping a strong attack on it, which you need to do to get it into its stun state. And it backstepped me both times. And on one of them, so I kept having to play through its combos because the opportunity to attack it just wasn't there. And it kept just avoiding the ability to get stunned, which the boss has that ability. The boss has a number of very obvious cruel ways of dealing with you, such as if you're going for a strong attack, he will sidestep you. Sometimes he can't sidestep far enough and you'll clip his shoulder or something. If you heal, he will automatically like bury that, especially his uppercut will hit you before the heal lands, which is very quick. It's very nasty. But this ending of the fight, that stagger window was open, and I knew if I didn't land this stagger, I was going to die because I was out of healing by this point. And it just kept dodging me. But I did have the improved stagger window, and it did stay open. In fact, I'm not even sure on this boss whether the stagger window closes on him. I've had that window open on this boss for multitudes longer than I've seen it on other enemies in the game, but that might be because by then we did have the stagger window increase. I managed to land it. I got the riposte. I was down to, I think, about a quarter health. And this last 20, 30 seconds of the fight was heart racing because I knew it was do or die. And what an exquisite ending, because as the riposte went off, I'm looking at it. He's got like, I don't know, 10, 15% health left. I've got nothing left, but I did have my 3 Fable. So I was like, the only option I have here is to wait just that briefest moment for the hyper armor to start easing off, because they have hyper armor after you riposte them, and then send the Fable attack. And I didn't think it'd kill it, but it'd be very close to maybe one hit in order to pull it off as he died. What a beautiful, crisp ending to this fight. Really satisfying war that I had with this guy. Wonderful way to end this game. Wonderful, wonderful way to end this game. But everything I've just talked about there is not minor in comparison to how good they got towards the end. And that's why I'm so excited for their next game. If it is Wizard of Oz, I'm super into the theme. And I hope they tell the story in a way I enjoy, but I don't care if they don't. Like, I can do a recap later. I'm okay with that. But the growth and improvements they made during that DLC were fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So, yeah. High B, low A for me. Next one, I want to see in high A or an S tier for sure. Lies of P. See you later.